Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever.
Welcome, brothers and sisters. This is episode 97 of The Truth Table. I'm Paul Everton, the host. And today's guest is Shawn Buckley, who's a constitutional lawyer for 30 years now, and with a proven track record defending more natural health companies against Health Canada than any other lawyer in Canadian courts. He is also one of the founding members of the National Citizens Inquiry, which we're going to dip into that topic as well, where he acted as lead counsel. Mr. Buckley worked diligently in preparing and examining witnesses, which included heartbreaking and shocking testimony from members of the Canadian public, politicians, as well as legal and medical professionals who were brave enough to share their experience and knowledge with the nation. I look forward to this conversation very much. I've watched the National Citizens Inquiry. They're like 8 hours long, one of them. So it's a lot of material, but it is also very hard for an empath because it's very heartbreaking to watch your fellow man suffering. And we're going to find out, where Shawn stands at this point after the inquiry and how he feels about the state, the health of Canadian politics, the judicial system, and his conclusions coming up right after this. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And if you haven't seen it, the National Citizens Inquiry is available online on YouTube. It's under the National Citizens Inquiry. If you'd like to watch the testimonies of your fellow Canadians, I want to welcome Shawn to the show. Thank you so much for coming to the Truth Table.
Glad to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So you've heard a lot of testimonies over years, and you must have some kind of idea on the health of the judicial, the agencies of the country. And do you have any conclusions or summations of what you've witnessed as a constitutional lawyer?
So, Paul, let me just give context for those in your audience that aren't familiar with the NCI. So the National Citizens Inquiry was a citizen-organized, literally court. Until the end of the Edmonton hearings, the commissioners were completely independent, much like judges. And the idea was, listen, COVID is the largest event to impact Canadians, even in wartime. Canadians, were locked down, we were masked, we were forced to do this and that. And regardless of where you are on the COVID conversation, really it had to be looked into. And so it was meant to be an impartial inquiry to hear from all sides with witnesses called in a very formal context. Everyone had to swear an oath as if you were in court. So literally, if you didn't tell the truth, that's perjury. You don't have to be in court to be subject to perjury. Questioned by lawyers and then questioned by independent commissioners who issued reports completely independent of, the administrative part. Up till the end of the Edmonton hearings, the NCI was like a court. It was completely independent, it's never been done in history. Now, we didn't anticipate, how healing it would be for the nation. Like, we started holding hearings in March of 2023. Well, this was the first winter in 2 years that we weren't locked down. And it was surprising, Paul, because so many people were afraid to testify. Like you literally had to win a lottery to get selected. And we had so many people applying, and you had to get through, a bunch of different interviews. If you were testifying about a vaccine injury, you had to be also interviewed by a medical doctor so that we could screen out anyone that, really it wasn't realistic for them to conclude that they had a vaccine injury. And in many cases, their own doctors said, no, this is vaccine injury. But we wanted it to be, as legitimate as possible. And even with that, we found that people were dropping out. So they'd drop out on that day, they would drop out a day or two before. And it was interesting. So fear of losing jobs, fear of being further ostracized socially. Like one thing I didn't understand going into this, I just assumed that, and again, it didn't matter whether you're pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, we didn't care. We wanted to hear from everyone. And what was beautiful about that is because people were free to tell their stories, I got a completely different view of vaccinated people. And vaccinated people got a completely different view of unvaccinated. Like we learned we're all the same. And it was, it was extremely healing. But one thing I learned is I assumed that people that didn't want to get vaccinated, that still did get vaccinated, it was mainly economic. Because I had friends who said, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to lose my job. But actually, it was more the social pressure. Like we are social beings, and this, we can't be ostracized from the herd. And it was more social pressure. But that's what the National Citizens Inquiry is. And your original question basically is like, really, what was it like? And everyone who, did all 8 cities, including the AV team, which I'm still in touch with, we all suffered post-traumatic stress disorder at the end.
Yeah, it's terrible what happened.
Everyone, but you pick a day, like watch the full day. Like they've broken it up where every witness has their own page, and you could just say, hey, I'm watching this witness or that witness. But starting with Toronto, because that's kind of when we got our act together, just pick a full day and watch it. And you won't be the same. Like you cannot watch a full day and be the same. Whether you agree with what people are saying or not, again, it doesn't matter. You will not be the same. And you'll see things differently.
Yeah, the big impact for me was the swearing of the oaths, they're putting themselves on the line right from the start. And so that, adds a lot of credibility to the whole thing, which is really what's so important about National Citizens Inquiry, is because it stands in truth. This is my truth, even though if I'm crazy and I made this all up in my brain, at least it's my truth. This is what is true to me. So there's a lot to be said about that, and you did a great job. And I'm so grateful that you started that. And when people were very suffering around us, and we were witness to that, and I don't know any other lawyers willing to do that, to put it all on the line, because you kind of did, right?
Well, I lost my practice. So, and Paul, in all fairness, when I got involved, and I was involved on the ground floor, I wasn't anticipating that I would have to do as much work as I did. So, but the reality is when you get involved in volunteer organizations, usually it's just a handful of people that carry it, and everyone else is there to give their piece, but not really getting their hands as dirty as they should. So I ended up closing my law practice in the August following, because I had to completely ignore it for about 8 months in the preparation and running it, and it couldn't recover. So I closed my physical office in August, and since then my practice has actually cost me more money to run than I make, because it's dead. So I'm actually thinking of not renewing my license next year, because what's the point?
Are you black pilled like me though? Do you have hope?
What do you mean? What do you mean black pilled?
Well, I'm black pilled because it just seems like if they can cheat in elections, they can cheat in polls, they can cheat on the use the media to push an agenda. I mean, we really seem powerless. A lot of my interviews were whistleblowers within different departments, Ontario Provincial Police, Canadian Ranger, even the military. So I mean, it's like there's nobody for us, no advocates for our bodily autonomy, for one.
Well, I think you have to understand where we are. Like this is a war. I mean, this is a war, and instead of bombs and bullets, it's a full-blown information war. Like we called this, one of our witnesses, Dr. Robert Malone, we called him in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd think we would be calling him to talk about mRNA vaccines because he's one of the main creators of that platform and holds several patents on it. But he's also an expert in fifth generational warfare. So we actually called him as an expert in fifth generational warfare. And, it's shocking. Like he's actually in his testimony, and we entered it as exhibits. You can go and look at the exhibits. He's saying, during COVID, mainstream Canadian newspapers were running stories that the military is running a psyops against the Canadian public. Like this is in mainstream news. And it's like, what do you do, Paul? What do you do? Like you're having your Sunday morning coffee, you're reading, the Toronto Sun or whatever, and there's an article on there and how your military is running a military grade psyops against you. And what do you just turn the page and read the hockey scores? I guess you do, because that's how effective these things are. But we're in a war, and you give me an example of a war where the aggressor who starts the war doesn't just roll over the other side for a year or two.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my favorite example, like World War II. I mean, Germany rolled over Poland, Germany rolled over France, Germany rolled over the Soviet Union until a point. Like the Korean War, I mean, literally, if you were, a South Korean soldier or a American soldier, you'd like look over your shoulder and go, oh yeah, that is the ocean behind us. Like they literally had them back to the ocean before they held the line and then started pushing back. So, is the line being held yet? I'd say no. Like with all these laws being passed that are putting the federal government in the position where, really Parliament doesn't even manage things anymore. Like I'm an expert in the Food and Drug Act. Mm-hmm. Well, how many Canadians even know? Like, so now every time we have a federal budget, Health Canada makes substantive changes to our food and drug laws in the budget. Like nobody looks for that in the federal budget. Budget bills are like telephone books in length. Like I can promise you that no MP actually reads them. I'd be surprised. I shouldn't say no MP, but I expect most of them don't. And most of them don't understand what they're reading. And how on earth can there be substantive changes in a budget bill to our food and safety laws? But in the 2024 budget, the Minister of Health was given basically godlike powers to take control over our food supply and our drugs. So and it reads like a shopping list on how to correct the errors in the last pandemic. Mm-hmm. So the Minister of Health now, all of a sudden, has the power to issue an order prohibiting off-label use for a drug or a class of drugs. And let me explain what off-label use is, because your audience might be going, what the heck is off-label use? So the provinces have jurisdiction over health, which is why they regulate your doctor, which is why they run the hospitals. And the federal government doesn't have the right to step in to the doctor-patient relationship. That's provincial regulation. But the federal government uses its criminal law power to say what treatments we can access, and it's a complete fraud. And I'm happy to go into that later. But so our Food and Drug Act is actually an exercise of the criminal law power, and we're in this world where it's actually illegal to treat ourselves with anything but things that bureaucrats in Health Canada say we can. And from a legal philosophical perspective, that is absolutely outrageous. And where it's completely illegal for anyone involved in treating patients or in providing treatments to share truthful health information. So they can't share with you their success stories. So you can't make good health decisions. So you're trapped in this government chemical drug model. But anyway, the federal government steps in with their criminal law power and they approve the drugs. So if they don't approve it, you can't use it.
Right.
So off-label uses is, let's say, we're Pfizer and we want to get approval for a breast cancer drug. Well, we're going to structure our clinical trial. We're only going to deal with stage 1 breast cancer because we don't want big safety signals. And people in stage 1 are much more likely to live, even taking our drug, than people in stage 2, 3, or 4. We also are going to limit our clinical trial to young people for the same reason. We don't want too many people dying from our drug. And young women are much more likely to survive than older women. So let's say we run our clinical trial on stage 1 breast cancer for women aged 24 to 38. And we're only going to run it for maybe a month or 6 weeks, because we don't want to run it any longer than that. We really might run into safety signal problems with the chemical chemotherapy drug. Well, Health Canada approves it. Well, they're going to prove it based on the clinical trials. So they're going to prove it for women aged 24 to 38 with stage 1 breast cancer. Now you're an oncologist and you have a 40-year-old. Well, your use of that drug is off-label use. Using it in stage 2, 3, or 4 breast cancer, your use is off-label use. It's only approved for the narrow group that the clinical trials were run on. We don't run clinical trials on pregnant women and children. So almost all drug use in those groups are off-label use. And then a drug can be on the market and it might actually suck for what it's approved for. But doctors, learn that, well, wait a second, it's helpful for something else. Well, they're free to prescribe it for whatever they think it's going to, work for. That's off-label use. So actually, most of our drug use is off-label use. Now, the Minister of Health doesn't know how doctors are using drugs, and the Minister of Health doesn't know these patients. So the Minister of Health should in no way ever be interfering with the doctor-patient relationship and say doctors can't use a drug for off-label use. But in our 2024 budget, the Minister of Health was given authority to basically prohibit the use of a drug or a class of drugs for off-label use. And the Minister of Health was given the authority to prevent the promotion of a drug for off-label use. Now, Paul, this is for the pandemic. This is for ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, because he also got authority to prohibit the use of veterinary drugs and the promotion of veterinary drugs for human consumption. Now, in the 2023 budget, they changed the penalties for natural health products, and ivermectin would fit under there, from $5,000 a day to $5 million a day. So in the last pandemic, let's say you had Dr. Trozzi on your show, and Dr. Trozzi was saying, there's all this research showing that ivermectin is effective in preventing viral infections like COVID, which is 100% true. We know that the colleges of physicians and surgeons went after doctors like Dr. Trozzi, but they didn't go after Paul Everton for having Dr. Trozzi on his show. Now you could be, if the Minister of Health said, I am prohibiting the off-label use of ivermectin and the promotion of the off-label use of ivermectin, now you would be subject to a $5 million a day fine for every day your show was posted, because Canadian law, every day an online thing is available as a different publication every calendar day. And that's how for the next pandemic, they're going to ensure that Canadians are not allowed to have access to truthful health information.
Dr. Trozzi, he was episode 20 on the Truth Table. So if you want to hear his testimony, that's where it is. but yeah, yeah, a lot of people, a lot of bad things happen to a lot of good people. I'm surrounded with good people. All my Facebook friends, all my guests. I like all my guests, and they all have, a part of section of this story of Canada. Now, you were talking about the earlier about the Charter of Health and Freedom,
Oh,
Health Freedom in Alberta. This is. Do you live in
well,
Alberta?
this is
I'm sorry, I
actually,
don't know.
I'm in Alberta, but this is national.
Okay, yeah,
So let me just share with you the drug model a little bit first, because I kind of touched on it answering your last question. And then it'll be a good segue into the health charter. But most Canadians would actually be shocked if they understood our drug laws, because we assume that Health Canada is there for our health, like to get good health outcomes. And we assume that our drug approval process is to get good health outcomes. And that's absolutely wrong. And I can tell you, I've been working with the Food and Drug Act and drug regulations for 30 years. I actually started working for Health Canada. If we have time later, I'll share that story.
yeah, sure.
And then I started working for natural health practitioners and manufacturers and the like against Health Canada. And I think I can comfortably say that I have defended more natural health companies charged by Health Canada criminally than all other lawyers in Canada combined. And I've spent half of the last 30 years, half of my career, basically running interference with Health Canada when there are charges. So likely I have more experience in this area than any other Canadian lawyer still practicing. Now, the drug model. Let's just talk about serious health conditions. Now, Paul, if anyone watching this has a heart attack and they're rushed to the hospital, or if anyone watching this, has had cancer testing and they get a text during the show that says it's stage 4, go to emergency now. Or if anyone watching this, has a nervous breakdown and they're rushed to their hospital, we all know that the only treatments they're going to be offered are chemical drugs. And I can add, they may not know, well, they were novel, they were new chemicals that had a patent when they went through the new drug approval process. Now, in every province, so we've got this government-funded healthcare system where the federal government basically ignores our constitution and division of powers and taxes the whole country, and then says to the provinces, well, you have jurisdiction over health, but I'll give you this packet of money if you do what I say. So basically, if you give me authority, your provincial authority over health, I'll give you all this money. And the court should have never allowed that. This started under Trudeau Senior, Pierre. Where now our constitution is like toilet paper, the BNA Act, because the federal government has taken almost all the provincial jurisdiction with money. But all of the provinces offer free health care, but it's all chemicals. It's all chemical drugs. Now, this is by design. And it's what I call the drug model. So it's really got 3 parts. So the first part is you make everything a drug. And actually, Paul, you look a little dehydrated. Can you drink some water?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just made water a drug. Because anything used for therapeutic purpose, the drug is defined so broadly. It doesn't matter, chemical, natural, ginger tea to treat nausea, water to prevent dehydration, anything used for therapeutic purpose is a drug. So that's the first thing, is you cover everything. Anything used for therapeutic purpose is a drug. The next step is you make all drugs illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So we may have been using ginger tea for 3,000 years to treat nausea. No, now that's illegal. It's illegal to use anything for therapeutic purpose, except that Health Canada will grant temporary exemptions in the form of a license. So in Canada, it's illegal to use any treatment. It doesn't matter how long we've been using it. It doesn't matter how safe it is. Like I say, ginger tea, if you want to use it to treat nausea, even though we've been doing that since ancient Egypt, no, it's illegal. And Health Canada will shut you down and put you in jail. And don't you dare share truthful health information about it. because all drugs are legal. Everything's a drug. All drugs are legal, but Health Canada grants temporary exemptions in the form of a license. So we're in this legal philosophical prison where we're only allowed to use treatments that Big Brother says we can use. So if Health Canada doesn't say you can use it, you can't use it. The third part of the drug model, and I'll just limit it to serious health conditions, is for serious health conditions, you make the drug approval process so expensive. And when I say so expensive, the last time I had a drug approval expert on the stand under oath, and I asked, what's the average cost to get through the new drug approval process without blinking? $1 billion.
Billion.
$1 billion without blinking. This now you can do it on a simple application for several $100 million, but some applications will take you more than $1 billion. So the average cost is $1 billion. So on a natural product, you don't have intellectual property rights. If you invent something new, like a chemical, you can apply for a patent because it's new, you invented it, and we want to reward you for inventing it. So in the drug world, you can get a patent in Canada for 25 years, which means nobody else can make it without your permission. You have a monopoly. So if you're, Pfizer, you'll spend that $1 billion on a novel chemical, because if you get through the process and get approved, no one else can compete with you. And so you'll make your $1 billion back and more. So you can have 10 in the queue. If you get 2 through, you're dancing down the streets. I use Viagra as an example, and Paul, you and I are old enough to remember Viagra. It's the first, erectile dysfunction drug. So they created this condition of erectile dysfunction.
Fluoride.
And so there was no competitor. Viagra was the first one. And so Pfizer has a patent, no one else can make it. So they go through this expensive process, they get approved, no one can compete with them. And I remember the mainstream media would run stories, because they were fun stories, on how expensive a single pill of Viagra was costing, because people would pay anything for it. Well, now the patents run out, and anyone can make sildenafil, the generic term, and so the prices drop like a rock. So they're not going to make as much.
Yeah.
But because of this model, we've basically made it functionally illegal to treat serious health conditions with anything but novel chemicals, because we've created this structure where you can only treat anything, a serious health condition, with things approved of by Health Canada. And we, by design, and let me say that again, by design, have made the approval process so expensive that the only drugs, so in our lifetime, Paul, and in fact, in the lifetime of anyone watching this, the only drugs that have been approved for serious health conditions, except for the exception of one drug sponsored by government, have been novel chemicals that had a patent when they went through the drug approval process. Now, if we were to abolish, I just want everyone to understand how stupid this is and how dangerous this is. If Canada was to abolish its drug laws and policies and say, we're starting from scratch, we just want good health outcomes. That's all we want. So for serious health conditions, everyone in the world, you come to us and tell us, how do we get good health outcomes for serious health conditions? Like what, there are 8 billion of us on the planet? Not a single one of us is going to come back to Health Canada and say, I got it. I know how Canadians can get good health outcomes for serious health conditions. Make it illegal to treat serious health conditions except for chemicals that haven't been invented yet. And we'll go, what? What are you talking about? That's madness. We're not going to get good health outcomes by making it illegal to treat them except with chemicals that haven't been invented yet. But that's our health law. Because the kids born today, we're being treated with chemicals that didn't exist when we were born. Because when the patent runs out, the generic drug companies start making it. It stays on the market for a while, but there's no money there. So I'll pick on Pfizer. Then Pfizer will go through this new drug approval process with a new chemical. And then the medical journals will be doing publications about the new chemical. So the doctors and hospitals and the people that decide what chemicals we're paying for in our government-funded healthcare, it's all about the new chemicals, and the drug reps are pushing the new chemicals, and then eventually you stop making the old chemicals. They're called orphan drugs. We even have a word for it, orphan drugs. So the orphan drug could work better. The orphan drug could be safer, but it's no longer made, and now we're using a new chemical, rinse and repeat. So we're treated with different drugs by and large. Like, there's the odd exception, I get it, but the rule is we're treated, people my age and your age, Paul, we're treated with novel chemicals that didn't exist when we were born. Our parents were treated with novel chemicals that didn't exist when they were born. And our kids, when they are having heart attacks and cancer, they're going to be treated with chemicals that don't exist today. And it's madness. It's a trap.
It is.
So, Charter of Health Freedom, natural products threaten this drug model. So our drug laws are not there to get good health outcomes. In fact, there's nowhere in our Food and Drug Act or regulations that say Health Canada should get good health outcomes. They don't even have to act in the public interest because it's not about the public interest. So our drug laws are to protect intellectual property rights. Full stop. They're there to protect intellectual property rights. Well, the natural health products create a problem. And in my 30 years of practice, Health Canada has for that entire 30 years been trying to get rid of our natural health products. And it's only because of citizen pressure on the politicians that we still have them at all. So, with citizen pressure, like they put us into a drug model in 2004. We've got these natural product protection regulations where for the first time we have to get government pre-approval. Well, we didn't before. Like, really? We've been using ginger tea for 3,000 years. You can't point to a single death ever caused by natural health products, a credible death. Like, they're safer than lightning. Canadians are 14 times more likely to be struck by lightning, killed by lightning and killed by natural health products. Let's not even have a safety discussion. That's madness. The safety signals are so low, you can't even measure whether any intervention saves lives or not. Like, you don't even go there. But so many Canadians, Paul, I can give you example after example after example of Canadians that are only alive because of natural health products. And most of us use them because we need them. And there are millions of us where we have chronic illnesses, the chemical drugs didn't work or had awful side effects, and we're completely healthy because of natural health products. Well, we're biting into the profits of the chemical drug companies, and Health Canada's salaries are paid by the chemical drug companies, the licensing fees. Do you know, like I told you about this $1 billion process? Well, on a difficult application, the licensing fee paid to Health Canada to process the application itself is $250,000. Like, Health Canada depends on the chemical drug companies for their salaries. In criminal trials where I get their internal emails because they have to disclose them, they refer to the chemical drug companies as their clients.
Yeah. Is Health Canada negligent or sleeping at the wheel by spraying everything with glyphosate?
Well,
because they're spraying the forest right now.
Everything's upside down, isn't it? And that's why the forest fire smoke smells like chemicals more often than not.
But the one thing I just wanted to add is glyphosate. It affects your cognition, your ability to critical think and make decisions. I mean, and this will affect the animals in the forests. I mean, and the fish. I mean, it's going to affect all life. And Health Canada somehow approves and allows and does this openly. We know about it. Just like National Citizens Inquiry was filled with information, testimony of open air crime. And I'm hoping we see remedy and somehow find a way to replace these people with people that aren't based on greed and can't be bought and can ensure seeds, what do you call them, heritage seeds, and preserve natural products. So you're right, we're at a war.
Well, and it's almost like Orwellian, like that they're called Health Canada. We would be so much better off if they were just abolished and their buildings were demolished.
Yeah.
And we shredded all their records and pretend, and like one thing that came to mind when you were talking is, in the Vancouver hearings that we had in 2024 at the National Citizens Inquiry, one of the witnesses who testified was Dr. Paul Thomas. And he's the pediatrician that years ago came up with an alternate vaccination schedule for kids in the US, because if you followed the FDA one, you were stacking too much heavy metals. And so he spaced it out for better health outcomes. And he kind of became a lightning rod. So he wasn't anti-vax vaccination. He was just, the science clearly shows you can't have too much. You're basically toxic loading these kids and causing brain damage. So, but he's got this big. He ran this huge clinic, pediatric clinic, like with a whole bunch of doctors, and they took runs at him. So they've crunched the data, and it's a large data set, like a large number of kids, where they basically crunched the data between vaccinated kids and unvaccinated kids. And he's testifying, like, basically on every health measure, unvaccinated kids are more healthy. But he was talking about, in the United States, the number of adults that are fully unvaccinated, like have never been jabbed, is an extremely small percentage of the population.
Yeah.
But because there's 400 million people, it's a big sample size. Do you know what the incidence of heart disease is among adult Americans that have never been vaccinated?
Zero.
Do you know what the cancer rate is among elderly, Americans who've never been vaccinated?
Zero.
And you can go on and on and on. So that data is strongly suggesting that even the childhood vaccinations that you and I took, lead heart disease, cancer, arthritis, you name it, diabetes, you just name it, they have none of it, which means, Paul, that you and I are going to die of a vaccine injury.
Yeah, and we're funding greed.
We're going to die of cancer or heart disease.
Yep.
So our food supply literally is poisoned.
Yep.
And the fact that
how does that happen?
Genetically modified corn and wheat, like, help me out. It's like, if the government approves it, you should run. And I fought these, I'll call them people, but another term comes to mind, so I had to catch myself. If you believe them, you're in a different world. Like, everything's upside down. Our regulatory bodies, and here's the problem, is legally, like, people think, oh, well, Health Canada's ensuring we have a safe food supply. Are you kidding me? Health Canada's ensuring we have a safe water supply. Are you kidding me? Like, on what planet is it okay to be spraying defoliant chemicals like glyphosate in our forests? We know it's a deadly carcinogen that is very difficult to break down. So we're poisoning our planet. We're poisoning our water supply.
Yep. But it's been shown that induces several neurotoxic effects. It's been shown that exposure to this pesticide during the early stages of life can seriously affect normal cell development by deregulating some of the signaling pathways involved in this process. So, I mean, it's absolutely not beneficial in any sort of way. It does harm, and it's being allowed by the government. They're spraying it on the food that the children will eat. So there's no escape at this point, because now they're spraying the forest. So even though the wildlife is being harmed at this point,
and our water supply is being poisoned, and even organic food contains smaller amounts of it. So you still have to eat organic. Now, I didn't answer your question about the Charter of Health Freedom. And I'd introduced the idea, like, Health Canada hates natural health products because we're competing. We're not allowed to compete in the serious health conditions, but, for chronic illness, I mean, the natural health product world totally shines. So let me tell you about the Charter of Health Freedom, how it came about, and then I want to share how I got into this, because it illustrates how important this is and how it's life and death. So one of the efforts, like I've said, my whole career, Health Canada has been trying to get rid of natural health products, but Canadians keep rebelling and keeping them there. So one of the efforts was in 2008, the Harper government introduces this. It was called Bill C-51. And for those of you who were,
Yep.
in the natural health community at the time, oh yeah, Bill C-51, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was just going to be really bad for us, create all these godlike powers for Health Canada and these awful penalties. And so the NHPPA that I'm part of, Natural Health Product Protection Association, I know it's a mouthful, but just think Natural Health Product and then Protection Association. And the website's following my name there, nhppa.org. It was our first fight. We had just formed shortly before that, and a whole bunch of other groups form, and we have this big fight, and we win. Like an election's called before the bill passes, and the Harper government's learned, and they're not going to reintroduce this. So, but we're all exhausted, and we're losing products already because of these NHP regs, which were another attempt to get rid of them. And the only reason we still have them is pressure to force them to be reasonable with these regs. And so the NHPPA held 2 national conferences. So literally we had consumers, we had practitioners, we had manufacturers, we had, the whole gamut, retail stores. And we had 2 conferences and said, listen, we're in this war of attrition. Like Health Canada comes up with these initiatives and we all organize and we're happy if we just don't lose too much, but we're slowly losing. And then they wait and groups disband and then they come up with their next initiative. How do we stop this? And the solution was the Charter of Health Freedom. So we drafted literally a health bill of rights. And the Charter of Health Freedom does several really neat things. So the first thing it does is it takes the health rights courts already say we have, and it codifies them. It says, here they are, and this has priority over all other government legislation. This is a health bill of rights. There's no ambiguity. Here they are. The health charter also creates some legal presumptions that don't exist, but are super important. The most important one is the legal presumption that the best source of information as to whether or not a treatment works for you is you, right? So if you've tried everything else, like, the Parker case comes to mind. It was one of the, key marijuana cases. This poor guy is literally suffering horribly. All the chemical drugs didn't work. And, but cannabis worked for him. Well, the government lawyers are, no, you should be taking these other treatments because there's no legal presumption that he's telling the truth. Well, we need that. When you found that only one thing works for you, you don't need 10 Department of Justice lawyers with unlimited budgets and health experts and doctors telling the court that no, all these other things are going to work for you when you've already tried them and they don't work. Like your dad. So the health charter does that. And the health charter also takes the regulation of natural health products and other low risk treatment modalities away from Health Canada and creates the Ministry of Wellness with the legal obligation to protect and promote our access. And then it does something absolutely common sense that should be the law applying to everything, but it requires a legal risk analysis if you want to restrict a treatment. Because think about it, if you want good health outcomes, you can't just say, oh, there's a theoretical risk. Let's protect Canadians from a theoretical risk without going, but what's the benefit? Are there people that actually are only alive because of this product? If you take it away, what are the health consequences? Like if you want good health outcomes, you don't just look at the risk and go, oh, we need to restrict this. You look at the benefits, and then you manage those two in a way that are going to have the best health outcomes. And so it requires that in law. Because Health Canada will never do a balanced risk analysis when it comes to natural health products. Because if they did, then our health policy would be you can't take a chemical drug, especially for a chronic health condition, unless you've exhausted all natural health products. Because the risk profile of the chemical drugs and the efficacy profile is so awful that if we wanted good health outcomes and actually did a balanced risk analysis, our law would be except you shouldn't be telling people what they should do. Our policy that we recommend should be that you try natural product first. So anyway, the health charter is our best way out of this mess. It's our solution. Well, you pulled up our website and it's showing this health charter tour. Do you want to pull it up again?
Yeah, sure.
We have been collecting. So just go to the homepage. We have been collecting petitions, paper petitions. When we wrote the charter, it was 2008. There were no such thing as electronic petitions for Parliament. So we've been collecting signatures quietly, and we now have, I think, like almost 148,000 signatures on a paper petition, which makes us the third largest in Canadian history. So what we've decided to do is we're going to start this thing on the West Coast, and we're going to drive it to Ottawa. Partway to Ottawa, we're going to start on the East Coast and drive it, and we're going to start in Quebec and drive it. So we're starting on October 4th, and we're going to end on October 25th and present, drop the petition off to an MP that's going to have it entered. But we thought, why don't we along the way do something that nobody's ever done before? We're going to have an online health show. So we're going to be broadcasting, we don't know if it's 3 days a week, 5 days a week for 3 weeks, the world's greatest health show. Now, most health shows, Paul, they have health experts, right? With really good information. Well, we're going to have the health experts with really good information, but we're going to do something nobody's ever done before. It is illegal to share truthful health information in Canada. The people that know that people's lives have been saved are the practitioners and the manufacturers.
Yep.
And people who know that, there are Canadians like who only, they're not disabled, they're healthy because of NHPs. Well, that's the practitioners and its manufacturers. It is illegal for them to share that with you. And Health Canada will attack them with a vengeance and shut them down and send them to jail if they share truthful health information with you. But it's not illegal for us to share it because we're not involved in providing treatments. So we're going to have ordinary Canadians who are only alive because of natural health products, who only are healthy because of natural health products. We're going to break the censorship. And this is going to do two things. First of all, it's going to do three things. It's going to let people share their stories. It's going to break the censorship because Canadians need to understand that having the right to choose natural treatments really is an issue of life and death. And then, let's say I'm suffering from arthritis and I'm being disabled from arthritis, even though I'm following my medical doctor's advice and I'm taking all the chemicals that they recommend, but I'm sliding and I'm becoming more disabled. I'm suffering side effects. And now I'm getting depressed because it seems my quality of life is over forever. Well, I don't know that there's a whole bunch of things that can completely cure me. And I become healthy again without side effects. But if I can watch other Canadians tell their stories, which are exactly like mine, except they've found freedom, I'll never know because Health Canada prevents the people who know from sharing their stories. Well, we're going to share their stories. Also, so Canadians can become free from debilitating health conditions, from learning from each other. So we're like super excited about this. So if you don't follow us, we have a weekly newsletter. We don't flood you with emails. Go to nhppa.org, subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll let you know about this. Follow us on social media. We're going to be having campaign after campaign to get, pressure on Health Canada and the MPs to get this charter passed. So it's pretty exciting.
I'm posting it. I'm posting it to all the different sites that I'm on, so they can just click it, the link, and go right to the health charter tour announced.
Oh yeah, no, we're trying to make it easy, and we start, basically in a month and a half. We're going to have, some campaigns for MPs prior to that, letter writing campaigns and stuff like that. We're going to make it all very easy, but we need you to follow us so that, and we're going to tour the land. We'd like you to come to our live events, and we'd like you to watch online, because this is going to, like the NCI, this is going to be life-changing, because we haven't had many health shows since COVID. So, you're not listening from the health experts on information that you need, and you're not hearing from each other on information you need. And we also want health food stores to participate and share their journeys. Now, can I share with you how I got involved? Because it drives home how this is life and death and how important this is. So I'm at a firm. I know nothing about natural health products. I know nothing about drug regulation. But the firm I was at had the federal government contract for Kamloops in the area. And there was a herbalist named Jim Strauss suing Health Canada. And what the situation was, and I can tell you Health Canada waived privilege on this, so I'm free to talk about it, is Health Canada basically was trying to shut this herbalist down and would refer to this herbalist as a rogue herbalist to me. So in an effort to shut this herbalist down, this herbalist was importing herbs from the United States, perfectly legal for this herbalist to import, and Health Canada stole them at the border. Like Health Canada seized the herbs. So basically stole them, and this herbalist was suing Health Canada to get the herbs back. So I get the file, I'm acting for Health Canada. I'm ashamed to say that I go to court and I have his case thrown out. He's suing them in the wrong court. But he and I got along really well. He actually took me out for lunch after I have his case thrown out of court. And shortly after that, I started my own firm. And in another effort to shut him down, they have the College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC charge him with practicing medicine because he was claiming to cure heart disease, to treat heart disease. And in BC, the act that gave doctors their medical monopoly at the time said that only doctors can practice medicine, and the practice of medicine was defined so broadly that it included making treatment claims. Like, remember, our system is geared to prevent truthful health information from getting out and to give this chemical drug model and medical doctors a monopoly, which is why when you engage that system for serious health conditions, or even for minor health conditions, the only treatments offered to you are chemicals that were new chemicals when they went through this drug approval process. So they're trying to shut him down. He hires me to defend him. Now, when I was acting for Health Canada, I believed what Health Canada was telling me, that what he was doing was dangerous. Because what they said was, listen, he's claiming to treat heart disease. This is dangerous because then people will not get the proper treatments, the Health Canada approved treatments, and they may die or they may suffer, and this is dangerous. And, you know, there was this jug of Kool-Aid there from Health Canada, and I drank it, and it was refreshing and tasty, and I totally bought it. And I actually thought, well, is this ever irresponsible? Here we have a herbalist selling unapproved treatments to Canadians. What an idiot I was to believe that. Do you know, Paul, at the time, every single natural treatment, everything in a health food store, this is like 1994, well, they were all unapproved because you couldn't get approved.
Yep.
Are you telling me ginger tea is dangerous?
Yeah,
So,
isn't that something, eh?
Heart drops.
Yeah, and a lot of traditional native part Micmac. So, you know, a lot of the ancestors, they had a lot of natural cures and they passed them through generations. But Health Canada would not approve.
Let me tell you his story. So he was an old guy. He was Austrian. He flew for the German Air Force in the Second World War, like just to date him, right?
Wow.
And his family had been traditional healers for 400 years. And he was trained by his grandparents to be a traditional healer. So he had like 4 centuries of traditional healing expertise, but he wasn't interested in that. He got a PhD in electrical engineering. He's working for BC Hydro as an electrical engineer. He has the heart attack. He's rushed by ambulance to the hospital. They do the angiogram and they say, Jim, you got one artery 100% blocked and another 80% blocked. To survive, you need a double bypass. And he decided, you know, I don't want that. So he checks himself out of the hospital. He makes his heart drops. He cures himself. Like, he lived another 30 years, died in an old folks home, never had the bypass surgery. he decided, okay, I saved my life. I have to share this. So now he's in the family business. Now, I go to him and prepare for the trial because we're dead in the water on the trial. The law says you can't claim to treat heart disease because it saved his life. He can't shut up about treating heart disease.
Yeah.
On the facts, I'm dead in the water. He's going to say, of course I say I can treat heart disease. He's going to tell the truth. So I go to his shop. It was a little shop then called Natural Way Herbs. Now they're Strauss Herb Company. And I say, Jim, is there any way we can show that you're telling the truth? Like, I know we don't have big double-blind clinical trials. And he said, oh, yeah, just hang on a second. He goes into the back and he brings me out a box. And then he goes and brings me another box, and he brings me another box. And I honestly forget now if it was 3 or 5 boxes. I know it was an odd number. And I take these back to my office. These boxes are filled with letters. So we're talking thousands of letters that people felt compelled to write them. And they were all the same. They were, I had heart disease, I was sick, I was dying, I took your heart drops, I got well. I can't enter a single one of those in court, pure hearsay. But I can call the authors of these letters to take the stand, to swear to tell the truth, to tell the truth. So at trial, I had 5 middle-class professionals. Like I had so many to choose from. I chose middle-class professionals because that's the judge's people. The judge is a middle-class professional. They'd all had heart disease. They'd all had at least 1 open heart bypass surgery. One of them had had 2 open heart bypass surgeries. They'd all continued to have heart disease because the reasons their arteries was plugging up were not being addressed. They all needed another bypass surgery to survive. A couple of them were too weak to survive the surgery, so the doctor said, go home and die. We're not going to give you a surgery that's going to kill you. And the others weren't willing to go through it again just to buy another year or 2. So for all of them, the approved Health Canada treatments were a death sentence. They all come across the heart drops, usually by naturopathic doctors. They all get well. Paul, they're all working full-time at the time of trial. They'd all been disabled for a decade or more. And you can't fake that. You can't fake being working full-time when you've been disabled for a decade. Like that was my road to Damascus experience. Because when I act for Health Canada, I honestly believe that it was reckless to allow a rogue herbalist, that's what they called him, to sell unapproved treatments to Canadians. Because my gosh, they may not get approved treatments. Well, do you think we're stupid?
Right.
After I prepared for that trial, the truth was the opposite. It was reckless and dangerous to deny Canadians who had no other choice, no other options, where the approved Health Canada treatments were a death sentence. The danger is not allowing educated Canadians to make their own health decisions.
Right.
And Health Canada censors. I can tell you those heart drops cured people. I can share those stories because I'm not involved in the business. But True Hope can't. Naturopathic doctors can't. Because there's censorship to protect this chemical drug health system and this drug approval process that pays Health Canada's salaries. So we're killing people. The danger wasn't allowing those heart drops on the market. The danger would be removing those heart drops, and the danger is the censorship that prevents. You know what the law should be, Paul? And I realize I'm getting long in the tooth here.
No, it's good. It's good.
The law should be that whether it's a chemical drug or a natural health product, that you have to share all the health information you have so that Canadians can make informed health decisions. And let me use antidepressants as an example. Because years ago, I'm in this federal court trial, and Health Canada brings in a drug approval expert, this private psychiatrist that runs a business, that all this business does is get psychiatric drugs through this Health Canada drug approval process. And I'm cross-examining this guy for days. And at one point, under oath, and I have the transcript, this drug approval expert starts complaining to me about how hard it is to get a new antidepressant through Health Canada approval process. And everyone's got to listen to this. You're going to lose faith in the system, and you should. Well, to get Health Canada approval, Paul, he's got to give Health Canada 2 sizable double-blind clinical trials showing that the drug works. And so double-blind trial means some people are taking a sugar pill, some people are taking the drug, and if there's a statistical separation on the things they're measuring between the sugar pill and the drug, if there's enough, it's almost like a magical formula, and once you hit it, this statistical separation, then we pretend, and I'll use the word pretend deliberately, then we pretend that means the drug works. This whole trial is structured to create statistical separation on some measures that might be completely meaningless in the real world. But if we can hit this magical statistical separation, then we pretend that that means the drug works. So he's got to give Health Canada 2 sizable double-blind clinical trials showing that this antidepressant works. Well, what he said under oath is, so I run 8 right out of the gate. I don't run 2, I run 8 at the same time, because I've learned I've got to run 8 to get the 2 that show the statistical separation between the sugar pill and the chemical drug, even though the whole thing's designed to give you this statistical separation.
Right.
Well, the other 6 could show that the drug works better than the sugar pill, but the safety signals are too horrific to share with Health Canada. Some of them could show the sugar pill works better than the drug, and some could be inconclusive. We don't know. But those 6 are never shared with Health Canada. Now, if you're a parent and the doctor wants to put your child on an antidepressant, which will only be approved by Health Canada for use for maybe a month or 2, but the psychiatrist will be telling you it'll take a month or 2 to work. Well, it's no longer being, now it's off label. Health Canada never approved it for more than a month or 2.
Yep.
But if you want to make that decision, is this a good health decision for my child to put my child on this antidepressant? Well, you know it's Health Canada approved, so it's safe and effective, right? Don't you think you would make better health decisions if the law was that that company had to share with you all of the clinical trial data and all of the safety data that they've collected, because people complain to them about side effects and deaths, and they don't share that with you. Now,
Well, you know, it's funny you should say that, because 16 years old, they put me on antidepressants, and for no reason, I ended up trying to hang myself. And, you know, so I can tell you that Ativan is probably not the greatest one to use, but, you know, still, they're addressing symptoms. They're not, you know, looking at, you know, what caused the causal. They're looking at symptoms and just remedying those instead of actually, you know, finding solution and remedy that works. So to me, it seems like the Health Canada can be fixed very easily. Do you agree? To me, it's just common sense.
Well, no, I think they have to be completely disbanded. I don't think you can salvage that culture and that mindset. And there's also a legal philosophical problem.
Yep.
So what right does the government have to say to Canadian citizens that you can't take a treatment that we haven't approved of?
Yeah.
Well, like that's pure Orwellian. Like that does not lead to good health outcomes. That leads to corruption. And you know, when Health Canada approves a drug, it's harder to sue them civilly, and you will never see them charged criminally. Like I'm sorry, but it's a problem with having a Department of Justice which is inconsistent with a liberal democracy, and having a Minister of Justice which is part of the government. That's not consistent with a liberal democracy, but that's a different discussion. But you will never see the Department of Justice and the police suing and putting in, or charging and putting in jail, pharmaceutical executives and employees for putting drugs on the market that kill people that shouldn't have never been on the market. Yeah. And part of that is well, they're approved of by Health Canada. There's this stamp, it's safe and effective. Surely we're not committing homicide, even though I promise you with a lot of their internal data, that's exactly what, you know, a jury would conclude. And surely they're not causing criminal negligence, causing death or bodily harm. Although I promise you that if a jury could see their internal data, that's what they would conclude. We never see those charges. So if we actually had a criminal justice system that would sue and put them in jail for harming people, and if we had a civil law system where you didn't have to pay $8 million and then you're facing lawyers that have no budgets, like but that's a different conversation.
Well, here we get the Order of Canada for doing that.
You know, if they were actually held liable for the harm they were causing, we wouldn't have this nonsense. And Health Canada doesn't stop it. And Health Canada censors truthful information. Let's just talk about, you know, I was talking about antidepressants, how the chemical ones, this censorship protects them. Because there's all this adverse reporting to the manufacturer. There's these clinical trials. There'll be animal studies, the whole thing that they don't have to share with you. But, you know, I had a case where Health Canada charged True Hope Nutritional Support. They had a vitamin and mineral supplement called Empower Plus. That's probably the best treatment in the world to treat serious bipolar disorder and major depressive disorder. And for a short period of time, Health Canada restricted access. You know, I would call person after person after person who said I had a suicide plan in place if I ran out. And I was, you know, involuntarily committed most of my life, but then now I'm free. I called Ron Lajeunesse, who was the president of the Canadian Mental Health Association, who would hold a press conference every time there was a death, that Health Canada is restricting access to the product. The court found as a fact that True Hope, it was legally necessary for them to continue to provide access to the product or there would be more deaths. So here we have a court basically saying Health Canada caused death, which they did, by restricting access to a vitamin and mineral supplement. Would you know there's about 30 published peer-reviewed journal articles, all funded by government on that product, and some in blue chips like Journal of Psychiatry, Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology, government-funded research, including research funded by the Alberta government, but governments around the world. The product has been so amazing. We've got like 30 peer-reviewed publications, all funded by government. They can't share that with you. It's illegal for them to share. It's illegal for True Hope to share with you government-funded, peer-reviewed, published research. And so again, you know, you're that father with a child with, you know, doesn't have depression, has bipolar disorder, and they want to put you on your kid on a chemical drug. Well, you can't see the information about it, and you can't see the government-funded research on an alternative. You can't even be told it's an alternative. How do we get good health outcomes with government censorship by Health Canada? So the whole thing is upside down and backwards. And you can't convince me that we would have way better health outcomes if we just abolished Health Canada.
Yeah, I don't understand how it's allowed to continue when it's all in the open like this. I mean, almost I don't know if it's because of my native blood or not, but almost 90% of all the women in my family are all vaccine injured and have some kind of bipolar or, you know, a lot of aggression. And so that's what I noticed. I looked at the ingredients after, you know, a few of my children passed after being vaccinated. So that's got me into what was in them. And I did the same with rainwater, with whatever they're spraying. That the only way to find out is to look at the rain. You know, it doesn't lie. It's telling you exactly what's coming from above. So, you know, it's pretty bad that we have to do all this work ourselves. And even like, do you find any positive, outcomes from the National Citizens Inquiry?
You had asked that question before, and I forgot to answer it. So, and I was using war as an example, that when you're attacked, you're rolled over. What we didn't understand, and what a lot of people still don't understand, is we're in an information war, and we're being attacked. The government is so adversarial to us on so many fronts. And it's basically, we've left the parliamentary system where ministers are being given so much power in the name of the king that, you know, there's not even parliamentary oversight. They just have so much discretion. And, you know, they're writing these laws so that, like, take the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health can exempt, this was in the 2004 budget, can exempt any drug or class of drugs from basically all of our safety regulations. You know, if it's in the public interest or, you know, may be necessary, blah, blah, blah. And then there's even a section saying, well, even if the minister is completely uncertain, that's okay. Well, that's no discretion at all. That's tyranny. So here we are, where Paul, you and I can't believe how bad it is, and we even know we don't even know how bad it is, because it seems to be every time you pick up a rock, it's under there. So where is it happening that we're not aware of?
Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, I'll say I was forced during COVID to all of a sudden accept that Christ is real. Like I was not religious, but I'm seeing evil everywhere. And then in almost every public ceremony, like, so we had the Commonwealth Games during COVID, and it's a satanic ritual. You know, the CERN, there's opening a tunnel or bridge in Europe. It's a satanic ritual. You know, the Super Bowl halftime show, like I'm seeing satanic rituals everywhere.
Yep. Even the rainbow is upside down. I'm put the
seeing evil, and so it's kind of like, okay, well, Satan's real, Jesus is real, and so he's kind of been reeling me in. I have come to understand that we are in a full-blown spiritual war.
Yeah.
That God is in it. He allows us, because of free will, to go places, but he turns it to our advantage. So, Paul, how many people would be totally asleep now and not have any understanding about what's really going on unless it got bad? And unless it gets worse, how are we going to turn and go, okay, we got to stop this. We got to rein this in. We've got to base our society again on actually what's good for people. Like the second commandment, we're supposed to love each other like ourselves. And that's what all our laws and all our regulations are supposed to be based on, is loving each other. Well, we wouldn't, in my field, we wouldn't have this drug approval policy we have. This isn't about loving each other. This isn't about good health outcomes. We wouldn't have all this greed. We wouldn't have censorship. Like, this isn't, so we've just gotten off the rails, but it has to get worse. I'll share with you, and then I've got to get going in a minute, but I'll share with you human nature. So one of the witnesses I called at the Red Deer hearings of the National Citizens Inquiry was a lady named Regina. And she was part of the solidarity movement in Poland from the beginning. And for those of your viewers who aren't aware of what I'm talking about, so Poland was a police state, and it had been a police state for 4 decades.
Right.
And the trade unionists, nobody wanted to be in a police state.
Yeah.
And the trade unions, called the Solidarity Movement, started to hold strikes to try and cripple the economy to topple the police state. And it took them years and years and years and years, because the Polish people wouldn't get involved. And Regina's in this from the beginning. And at some point, about halfway through, she gets arrested and sentenced by military tribunal, because she was handing out pamphlets to support this, to, I think it was 3.5 years in prison. And she served about 2 years in prison before she was released and allowed to come to Canada as a political refugee. But she said, you know, the population supported us, but they wouldn't take to the streets until, and listen carefully, the bread ran out. So when finally the strikes crippled the economy enough that it impacted people's lives, the bread ran out, now everyone takes to the streets. And we watched in real time, the Western world watched Poland's police state peacefully end. Well, they could have ended that police state in any time during that 43 years, I think it was. But it wasn't until the bread ran out. And Paul, I don't think it's until the bread runs out in Canada, so where it's so in our faces. Like, maybe it's when they lock us down in these 15-minute cities, and all of a sudden we can't drive. Or we have to get permission to drive to leave our city. Like, literally, we're in Hunger Game districts. They're already, floating the trial balloon in the Maritimes, so you can't go into the forest. That's just conditioning us. I'm sorry, on what planet does the government get to tell us we can't go onto our land?
Yeah, they're doing it again, aren't they? But this is important. This is, information that needs to be archived and preserved, and for the future generations, because we don't know what they're going to do next. We know what they're capable of. We've seen it, and you've shown the world. It's anybody can go look and see what people have done. Like National Citizens Inquiry. Would you ever do a segment for like whistleblowers in the Rangers or the the RCMP and testimonies from within these governmental bodies other than just health?
Well, the NCI and I resigned at the end of March at the Edmonton hearings. We
Oh.
were also looking into our children safe in Canada.
Mm.
But the problem is, Paul, is it's so much effort to be independent. Like they're no longer an independent inquiry. So that ended at the end of the Edmonton hearings.
Okay.
So, when a government's not going to take you seriously if you're not independent, and you've got to have the ability for the other side to actually have an independent tribunal so they can come and speak also.
Yeah.
So am I likely to do that again? Only if I have the power to subpoena. Am I likely to go through the effort it takes to have an independent inquiry? Which is why they're not independent anymore. I mean, it just really is an enormous amount of work. You have to have, counsel volunteering huge hours to make it happen, and
Mhm.
it's just no longer realistic. So, so I'm not meaning to be critical, but
No,
I'm not going to be part of an inquiry that isn't independent, and the amount of work's enormous. You give me subpoena power, I'm all over it. And subpoena
Yeah.
power means I can legally compel. And
Mhm.
maybe the day will come where some government will appoint me as part of a lead counsel on a commission with subpoena power. And
That would be wise of them. But I appreciate your time. I will put the link to this site so people can participate, be involved, and get some answers and watch a lot of informational videos, the health charter. So I wish you luck on that. I'm going to dig into it as well. I'm going to participate and join in all that I can do.
yes, please,
Now,
everyone subscribe, because we're going to create, first of all, you will want to watch this. Like it'll blow your mind, people telling their health stories. And then
Mhm.
also we'll have, world experts on topics you need to know about. Like you mentioned glyphosate, I'm going to ask Dr. Michelle Perro if she'll testify about glyphosate. She's a leading world expert on that. So, so you'll get health information you won't get anywhere else, plus the health stories you won't get anywhere. You just simply can't. But we'll need your participation. Like we're going to have
Yeah.
letter writing campaigns where you can send e-letters and that, postcards to send your MPs. We have to win this. Like
I
we have
agree.
to see if we can turn this around.
I agree. But I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the Truth Table. Um, I wish you all the best in the future. I wish everyone at home an enlightened future, because it is a spiritual war, and hopefully, well, biblically we know kind of how it goes. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but we don't want to, we don't want to go through this blindly. We want to be informed, and we also want to have our friends close. Keep our friends close and help those that we love. And I again thank you all at home for watching us and being a part of the show and talking with us in the comments. Shawn, I wish you the best. Thank you for coming on Truth Table.
Paul, it's just a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for what you do, because if you weren't holding shows like this, people have no opportunity to hear. And I don't know how you support yourself, but if you take donations, I'm going to encourage those watching to donate to you, because what people don't know is usually there's conversation before and after and stuff like that. And I find out a lot of people like you, first of all, the audience doesn't understand how much work it is. And a lot of people are supporting themselves and living like church mice when they're essential. Like this, we don't have a chance if people like
Mhm.
you aren't getting the truth out. So I certainly encourage people to support you and other podcasters that I think are, the sharp point of the spear on this.
It's my pleasure doing my part. I think it's a small part, but I do appreciate the opportunity to meet amazing people in a really tumultuous time in history. Thank you all for joining us at home. I'm Paul Everton. Thanks for watching the Truth Table.
having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever.